Hello and welcome to part 3 of my library tour. This is Taylor from Taylor Talks Comics. Of course, you already know that because you're watching this video. But yeah, so I've been breaking up my library tour in parts. I've been loving the comments and the reactions, people sharing, asking questions, all the discussions I've been able to have for the first 2 parts of the library tour. So I'm actually really glad I did break this down into parts for that reason. But I wanted to touch base a little bit and let you know that there will be 2 more parts for this. So the video you're watching right now, and then there'll be 1 more part. First 2 parts, we're doing this part of the library. And then today we're going to be doing these 2 shelves over here. And part 4 will be some odds and ends shelves that I have around the house with some more comics on it. But I want to give a quick shout out to some YouTube channels that have influenced my collecting or buying decisions. Up first, Earl Grey, who commented on my first 2 parts of the video. I thank you so much. That it's such an honor to have you watch my content. I've been watching your videos and your YouTube channel for a number of years. Earl Grey's got a great taste in comics, especially if you're looking for more of a even European flavor of comics or underground independent comics, what have you. Same thing for the Love of Comics, who I shouted out on the first 2 parts. And so kind of aped his style of his library tour where he broke it down into parts. He's also a great channel if you're looking for comics beyond just your usual capes and cowls, superhero stuff. For the Love of Comics and Earl Grey both dabble in a lot of underground, independent, and European titles. And manga even. So both of them have influenced a lot of my collecting and buying decisions and even my YouTube content. And then I also want to shout out Near Mint Condition, Omar. I actually do social media work for Omar. So if you follow Near Mint Condition on social media, I'm the guy making all those posts. But even before I started working with him, obviously he is like the best channel to receive content about Marvel and DC news, collected editions. And I actually found his channel from his top 20 non-superhero comics video. So he's also great, Omar. He's become a great friend. And then Cartoonist Kayfabe is one of my favorite YouTube channels as well. Ed Piskor, Jim Rugg, and then sometimes Tom Scioli. All cartoonists, so it's great to hear their perspective on things, but also they've introduced me to so many comics that I didn't know before. So I wanted to shout out those 4 YouTube channels. I'll put links down in the description too of all those channels. If you've never watched those guys, by all means, go and subscribe to the channels and let them know how you heard about them. But yeah, so I'm going to go over the rest of the tour. I'm going to flip the camera around and go over some more books. Please like the video if you like this content. Subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, all that jazz. And thank you so much for everyone that's commented. Please keep those going. Ask questions if you have any questions. Suggest books that you want me to do more deeper dives on. If I say like I need to do a video on that book, hold me to that. Put that in the comments. Say yes, I do want to see that video. Things like that. And then also, a thing I always ask: recommendations. If there's any books you see on my shelf that you say, hey, if you like this book, try this other book out. I'm always here for recommendations. I always want to try everything I can in the world of comics. But let's flip this camera around and continue part 3. Okay, so part 3 is going to consist of these shelves right here as I pan up and down. And we're just going to go one shelf at a time and hop to it. So up first, we're going to talk about the Rick Remender section. I talked about this a little bit on part 2, but I stopped myself because I realized it was on the next shelf. But this is very small. There's only 5 books here. But Rick Remender is reprinting a lot of his hardcovers in 2023, and I'll be picking those up. So this Rick Remender section will probably grow quite a bit by the time we get to the next tour. But up first we have Deadly Class. These are the DCBS variants, which are really cool. Covers, volume 2, and then volume 3. Actually, I haven't even started reading this series yet. I was kind of waiting for volume 4 to come out, which comes out later this year. I think in a couple months, actually. And I like to read a series from beginning to end if I can. So I'll be probably starting the series soon so I can read it when volume 4 comes out. But I already know, I already have a feeling I'm going to like it because it's like about teenagers going to like an assassin school to learn how to be assassins. And, but it's like seeped in like 1980s punk rock and teenage melodrama, which are two of my favorite things in comics. So I already know I'm going to like it, but I'll be starting that soon. Then we have 7 to Eternity, which is a series by Rick Remender and Jerome Pena with great coloring by Matt Hollingsworth, who is like one of the best colorists in comics, I believe. This is an all-in-one series, so that big, thick hardcover, you have the whole story here. And then another all-in-one is Tokyo Ghost, which was just recently reprinted. And I just finished reading this for the first time, like last week or so, so I need to do a video on that. But it's a really fun, kind of futuristic sci-fi sort of story. And I love that Remender has like the signature Remender sized, where all his books line up on the shelf real nice. And then we have Aliens and Predator comics. So I did a video on these on my channel actually, and the day I dropped the video is the day that it was announced that Marvel was taking over the license of Aliens. And in the video I was like, oh man, I can't wait. I hope Dark Horse releases more of these books. They're so great. I love them. And then literally that day, you can read it in the comments because some people are like, did you hear? Like, yeah, I can't believe the same day I released this. But this first one is the original comic series. This is the black and white comics of the first Alien series that Dark Horse did. And they were originally published in black and white, and they're reprinted here in black and white. Marvel's reprinted these stories in color since then. But these are library edition size. These are larger than Marvel's printed them so far, I guess. And then this is the second book. This is the original comic series. They don't say volume 2, but Nightmare Asylum and Earth War is what it collects. And this was Aliens versus Predator. This was actually not on my video because it hadn't come out yet. I think I dropped the video like the week that this book came out. But this collects the first Aliens versus Predator comic book series. And this is Predator. These are really great stories. Well, I guess I should probably show this up too. And this is Aliens Dead Orbit by James Stokoe, my favorite Aliens comic. Those are really great comics. The Aliens comics in particular are some of my favorite horror comics. And then the Predator comic, the red book there, is like, it reads like an 80s action movie. Just like the original Predator movie. And it's really great. So I can't recommend those enough. All those books are out of print, especially Dead Orbit, which is my favorite Aliens comic. I don't know if I said that or not. Those are all out of print, those versions. But Marvel has reprinted everything you see here except for Aliens vs. Predator. They haven't got to that one yet. But these Predator stories got an omnibus, and all these Aliens comics got an omnibus. I think there's 4 volumes. So there's even more Aliens comics that Marvel's reprinted that I don't have. And then volume 4 of the Aliens omnibus they just released has Dead Orbit in it. Up next I have the True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys slipcases. And these are like this super fancy slipcase editions, I guess. They come with like an art print. And then, let me get the other one. This is the Gerard Way series. And how earlier, Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance, who I'm a big fan of. The other day, on part 2, I guess, I talked about how Umbrella Academy is kind of like Gerard Way's love letter to Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. I kind of feel like The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys is Gerard Way's love letter to Grant Morrison's Invisibles. So, Gerard Way is a huge fan of Grant Morrison, and I think they've since become like best friends. So, but those are great series. The first one's got artwork by Becky Cloonan, I believe. I don't know why the artist's names aren't on there. Romero. Jordy Belair is on national anthem, and then I think it's Becky Cloonan, right? Why isn't it? That's weird. I don't know. Correct me in the comments. I'm pretty sure it's Becky Cloonan. But the artwork's great. The series is a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. If you're wanting to try one Gerard Way series, though, I'd say Umbrella Academy is probably the more accessible of the two. Then I got some Pride and Joys here. So the 8-ball box set. This is long out of print. I was searching for this. This is one of my big white whales in my collection. I wanted it so badly, and I finally found it for undercover price, which is crazy because it goes for like crazy, like $400 on eBay sometimes. But I found it for undercover price for less than $100, I think, a few years ago when I sold a bunch of books. And I was stoked to add to my collection because it collects the first 18 issues of Daniel Clow's 8-ball anthology. And this is another Pride and Joy. So this is the Love and Rockets box set. It collects true facsimile editions of the first 50 issues of Love and Rockets. And I have to give a huge shout out to Organic Price Books. I was doing work with them for a little bit late last year, where they sent me books and I did reviews for them for their channel. So this is a review copy that they sent me, and I can't thank them enough. Organic Price Books is a great place to buy comics, and they trusted me to try to sell this, and I feel like we moved quite a few of these from Organic Price Books, so I was pretty proud of that as well. But Love and Rockets is a great series. Again, teenage melodrama, punk rock, pro wrestling's involved in there, and it's just the Hernandez brothers, just Jaime, Gilbert, and Mario Hernandez, mostly Jaime and Gilbert, doing all of the stories, and the characters have progressed over the years in age and real time and stuff. It's just a fantastic series I can't get enough of. But that's the box set, and this is a beautiful box set that Fantagraphics put out last year, and like I said, it's the first 50 issues in true facsimile editions with the covers and everything. So I really love that. It's one of my Pride and Joys in the collection. Again, shout out to OPB. Here's another box set. This is Calvin and Hobbes, the complete series. My wife bought this for me for Christmas last year, and I grew up loving Calvin and Hobbes. It's one of the true gateways into comics for me. My older brother introduced the series to me, Real American Brian. I shouted him out on one of the earlier parts, but he has a YouTube channel as well. Check that out. But sorry, my camera's getting messed up there. But this is the box set. Like I said, these are all paperbacks. I heard they had another box set that was 3 volumes, same material, but they split into 3 volumes, and they're hardcovers. But I heard the binding wasn't so great, so I'm kind of happy to get this version. But Calvin and Hobbes is a fantastic series, and as a kid, I used to check out the books like from the library constantly. Like my school library had one hardcover of the series, and I don't think any other kid was able to check it out because I checked it out so much. That back there is a picture my son did a few years ago of the Nittany Lion from Penn State, because I am a Penn State graduate. Right here we have the three volumes of the Harry Potter Illustrated. I think I'm missing volume 2, so I have 1, 2, and 4. And then right here is the Fantastic Four Taschen edition. I need to take this out of the box so I can display it properly. But I truly, truly love that. Right here on this part of this video, between Fantastic Four, which is my favorite Marvel comic, especially the Lee Kirby run, and the Taschen book is beautiful, and the Love and Rockets box set and the 8-ball box set, those are like 3 of the true Pride and Joys of my collection, all in one video. And now we're going to move down to the first shelf here. So this is a lot of DC omnibuses and some other odds and ends. I had some people in the comments ask if I read DC comics because I've showed off so many Marvel stuff. I am primarily a Marvel comics reader, but I don't have an aversion to DC at all. It's just how I grew up. I don't think there's any... I don't subscribe to the Marvel versus DC nonsense. I just read good comics. Here's a little Batman figure that my son gave me to put by my Batman books. Up first we have Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. So as I've said on previous parts, Alan Moore is my favorite comic book writer of all time. This is a great example of Alan Moore and how much he loves superheroes. I think it's a common misconception that Alan Moore hates superheroes, or I don't know, wants them to only be miserable. This is a great superhero story, probably one of the best Superman stories ever, and it's Alan Moore writing it. And it acted as like the final Superman story before Crisis on Infinite Earths and before John Byrne's Man of Steel reboot. Alan Moore like begged to write the last Superman story of that era, if you will. This is the Dead Man Omnibus, which I was long, deciding if I wanted to pick this up or not. I love Neil Adams' artwork, and I love the idea of this character and stuff. And I hadn't tried it out at this point, but with the passing of Neil Adams last year, I kind of jumped on this rather quickly because I wanted to read more of Neil Adams' work that I haven't tried out. So pick that up. This is Justice League International Volume 2. On Part 1, I believe, I talked about how JLI Omnibus Volume 1 was my favorite read of last year. I haven't gotten to Volume 2 yet. I'm hoping that the quality stays there as far as how much I love that series. But it's kind of one of those things where, well, two things probably. Whenever I finish a big fat omnibus, I usually don't run and jump into another one right away. And two, when I love something that much, I'm kind of nervous to try out the next part in case it lets me down. But I'll get to it. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Jubilee Edition Omnibus. This includes the first 3 stories of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Kevin O'Neill and Alan Moore. It has like the first 2 volumes of that and then the Black Dossier. This is, I think I said this earlier on an earlier part, but I think this is Alan Moore's most accomplished work, like his most ambitious work, I guess. Just taking all these literary characters and then how he weaves them and ties them all together. It's not my favorite Alan Moore work, and I don't think it's his best work, but I do think it's his most ambitious. And it is one of his better works. I don't want to make it seem like that. This is Batman the Silver Age Omnibus Volume 1. I was really excited to try this out on the recommendation of Omnidog, Jess Bragg. He grew up during the time that these comics were coming out, and he knows my affinity for the 60s Batman TV show. And while these stories in here aren't the same, they have the same tone. But this is like Batman like fighting aliens and stuff. A lot of the wackier Batman stories that you don't really see much anymore. But it's a lot of fun regardless. The Brave and the Bold Omnibus Volume 1. I bought this last year as well because it has a lot of the earlier Neil Adams Batman stories and with this true coloring. So Neil Adams has a Batman omnibus dedicated to him, but the coloring in it was all recolored in modern times by Neil Adams before he passed. But the coloring just has like modern coloring and it's really garish. So this is I think the only place you can get oversized Neil Adams Batman stories with the original coloring. So far. Hopefully they release the rest of the run in a future Batman omnibus. Batman 66. So I just said how much I love the 60s Batman TV show. And I really do think if I were to look inside myself, be introspective, I think that my affinity for the Batman 60s or the 60s Batman show, even from my earliest age, like preteen, teenage years when I was watching reruns on TV Land, I think my affinity for that show is probably the reason why I love Golden and Silver Age comics so much. I think a lot of the charming aspects of that show is what I guess gives me a tolerance for what people think are the cheesier aspects of those eras of comics. But regardless, this was a modern comic book by Jeff Parker with some Mike Allred art. Jonathan Case does a lot of the art too. But this is like a continuation of the series. So this was done in modern times, this comic book, but it's done in the era of 60s Batman, the TV show. So all the characters look like they do on the TV show. And then they even introduced some villains that were never on those shows. Like even Bane makes an appearance, Two-Face, but done in that style of the 60s Batman. So that's a really great omnibus if you like the 60s show. Batman by Grant Morrison, Volume 1. Volume 2 and Volume 3. So this is a series that I've just started dabbling in. I just finished Volume 1 and I absolutely loved it. It was a true love letter to every era of Batman, even including the Silver Age wacky stories. But done in a visceral way that leads to Batman being introspective himself. Grant Morrison did an amazing job with the character. I'm on Volume 2, but this was kind of the same case with JLI 1, was that I love this omnibus so much that it kind of gave me a pause and made me read some other things. I will get to Volume 2, though, eventually. And then in between these would be the Peter Tomasi, Patrick Gleason, Batman and Robin series, and then the Batman Omnibus by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. I think Volume 3 of Grant Morrison, the Tomasi Omnibus, and this all kind of start concurrently a little bit. But regardless, I'm doing a big Batman read-through this year, where I'm reading a whole bunch of different eras of the character. And I do want to read that Tomasi Omnibus, but I'll probably do it digitally. And I've never read this either. I haven't gotten to this point yet. But this has like the big Quarter Owl story and whatnot. And now I just made those books full. So I was going to turn it and do a little audible here. These are the first 3 volumes of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur in these digest-sized, kind of made-for-kids books. I love this series. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. It's just super colorful series that I really enjoyed. And then there's that new cartoon series. Okay, this is really hard to do with one hand. That just came out on Disney Plus that is really pretty great too. But it's like a continuation of the Devil Dinosaur character from Jack Kirby, which you can see there. And my son's now since read this. I have the 4th volume, but I think it's on his bookshelf actually, because he's currently reading it. But a lot of fun. I think all ages comics. I think kids and adults will enjoy them. But just colorful, good-hearted superhero comics. And then here is the Dark Knight, Legends of the Dark Knight by Michael Golden. Michael Golden's a great artist that was super influential to like the Image founding fathers. They always cited his work. These are all his Batman stories in one slim hardcover. Down here you'll see all my Cable comics. So I spoke about it on part 1 about how I'm doing a big Cable read through. I am a Rob Liefeld apologist. So I love his artwork and his characters and his ideas. And the Cable character himself is just super cool. I think he gets a lot of flack for being like that 90s extreme era kind of stuff, which he is. I mean, none of these comics are like literary works of like great comics lore that I would recommend and I'd put up there with like Watchmen or anything like that. They're just fun Saturday morning cartoon beat 'em up kind of comics, and I enjoy them. I'm doing a big read through of the character of Cable though. I think he's an interesting character, especially with all the time jumps and whatnot and all the different eras and artists. I think the artists too really influenced me to do this, because you have like Rob Liefeld and you have JRJR, you have Greg Capullo, all the way to like Ladrone is on some of the artwork. Steve Skroce does a lot of the artwork. I like him a lot. So I don't think these are all in exact order. They pretty much are. With some of the X-Force and New Mutants Epic Collections too mixed in with the reading order, and then a couple of the omnibuses you've seen. But I do want to do a big Cable reading order video on my channel, influenced by the New York Edition one. Omar did a Cable reading order a few years ago, but it's a little outdated now because there's been so many of these collections that have come out since then. But regardless, let's run through these real fast. So I have Cable Classic Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and then Cable and X-Force Classic Volume 1, and then Cable and X-Force Onslaught Rising, which is the precursor to the Onslaught series, and then Onslaught. And then Operation Zero Tolerance is a Milestone book, and so I have some other Milestone books right here too. Those are the ones that I'm not entirely sure about the order as far as on the shelf goes. Of course, when I go to read them, I'll make sure they're in the right order, but there's some event books that Cable shows up in. Let's keep running through these. This is an era of Cable I've read a little bit of, before in small trade paperbacks, but I haven't read the entire story. It's where Cable has like the baby Hope. Is there a good image of her? No, there's not. Okay. But he's the baby Hope, like the last hope of mutantdom, I guess. And he's trying to save her and go through all these different time jumps and whatnot. This is The Legend Returns. This is Liefeld returning to the character of X-Force and Cable, with Shatterstar there and a bunch of others. Deadpool and Cable. This is early Mark Brooks interior artwork. Mark Brooks is primarily a cover artist now, but this is some of his early work. And I actually read this one years ago in Volume 1, and I didn't care for it. But I'm hoping maybe on this revisit, through all these other Cable comics, maybe I'll have a different appreciation for it. And this is where my Cable... There's Baby Hope. And this is where my Cable reading is going to end with the Messiah story. And then, I don't know, that's where I plan on ending it. Death's Head. This was a Marvel UK character with early artwork by Liam Sharp. He's one of my favorite big two artists these days. Deathlock the Demolisher. I just think this character is so cool, and there's never been a great run. A great modern run. I think they've kind of... He's appeared in some places like Uncanny X-Force and stuff, but I think he might be in Savage Avengers. But he's such a cool character, I feel like they should do more with him. Machine Man. This is a great collection. This has... So, Machine Man, the character debuted in the 2001 Space Odyssey series. So, Jack Kirby did the Treasury Edition film adaptation of the movie 2001 Space Odyssey. And then he did 10 follow-up issues, which were kind of his own stories, which have never been collected before. I do have all 10 issues that I'm going to custom bind, I think. I don't have the Treasury Edition, though. So if anybody has a good lead on the 2001 Space Odyssey Treasury Edition, let me know. It's one of my white whales right now that I'm trying to hunt down. But this character, Machine Man, debuted in one of those issues of 2001 Space Odyssey. I think it was like issue 7 or 8. I don't know. I know it was annoyingly expensive because speculators thought this character was going to debut in the MCU or something stupid. But then, Machine Man got his own spin-off series where Jack Kirby, it lasted 20 or so issues? 19 issues. You can see back there. And I believe the first 10 issues are Jack Kirby, and then the last 9 issues are Steve Ditko, which is just like such a fun idea that this was like in the 70s. This was 70s era, Kirby and Ditko. That Kirby started off the series, and then Ditko picked it up after that. So it's like the two stalwarts of the Silver Age Marvel working with the character. Moon Knight Legacy. This is by Max Bemis. I haven't read this one yet, but Max Bemis is from the band Say Anything. It's an old punk band I used to listen to, and I love that band. I love Max Bemis's his lyrics and his singing and his band, I guess. But he's written comics, and I haven't read this one yet. I do want to get to it, but I have read this. This is Jeff Lemire, Greg Smallwood, and Jordi Belair on Moon Knight, and amongst other artists. James Stokoe does a few pages in here too, whenever Moon Knight's going through some like personality shifts, I guess. But Jeff Lemire, I've talked about how influential on this library he was with Roughneck. But this is him doing Moon Knight, and this series is a must-read, and was one of the influences on the MCU Disney Plus show. Then I have Fantastic Four Complete Collection, Volume 1 of Marvel Knights Era. I believe there should be a volume... It hasn't come out yet or been solicited or anything, but I think a Volume 2 would complete the Marvel Knights era of Fantastic Four. But there's been nothing to come out of that. I hope... They haven't really touched on Marvel Knights with the omnibuses enough, I don't think. They've done, like, Punisher. I think they did, like, most of the Daredevil stuff, but all of the other characters haven't gotten the omnibus treatment. This is Human Torch and Thing, Strange Tales. So in the 60s era of, like, the Silver Age Marvel with Fantastic Four, the Lee Kirby run, concurrently they had a spin-off book of Strange Tales, and this collects Strange Tales 101 through 134 in annual number 2, but it doesn't collect the entire issues, because back then it was, like, the Thing, I think it started off with the Human Torch comic, and then it became Thing and Human Torch, where, like, the main figures in that comic, but then also the backup strips were like Doctor Strange for a bit, and then Nick Fury. So it doesn't collect anything that wasn't Human Torch or Thing related. But this would be a really cool oversized hardcover. It's got some early Kirby, not early Kirby artwork, but 60s Kirby artwork in there. That's good. Back there, I have a Stranger Things picture of the Thing and Doctor Strange. This was a gift from my buddy Dan, Paperback Dan. He's on YouTube and Twitter. Give him a shout out. He saw us at a convention and he sent it to me, which is really cool. Moving on, down here we have some more DC stuff. This is DC's Solo, a great project where a cartoonist was given an entire issue of DC Comics to do pretty much whatever they wanted. And this has a lot of my favorite artists in here, like Richard Corbin, Tim Sale, Paul Pope, Darwin Cook, Howard Chaykin, Mike Allred, Sergio Aragones, Brendan McCarthy. I mean, pretty much the entire list here are people that I have tried to collect all of their works on because I like them so much. But this is an oversized hardcover. It's only been printed once, but it's really, if you find it for a good price, I would seek it out. It's really, really cool. Adam Strange. A lot of this, anything Silver Age DC that you see on my shelf was influenced by Jess Bragg of Omnidog's Vault. So shout out to him. But this is Adam Strange. These are great sci-fi pulp stories of the Silver Age with great work by... oh, geez, sorry, books were falling. Great work. I'm trying to think. I'm drawing a blank. Murphy Anderson. There's no names on the back of this. Murphy Anderson. But they're like great sci-fi pulp action, which is different than your normal superheroes of the era, which I loved. Doom Patrol. So Doom Patrol was created by... oh, geez. There's no names on the back of this, and I draw blanks whenever I do this. Arnold Drake. Yes. Arnold Drake. In Doom Patrol, the team actually came out before X-Men. But you can see it's a team of weird superheroes with a white gentleman in a wheelchair as their leader. Very similar to X-Men. This came out a few months earlier. It's never been proven or confirmed whether or not this was a weird coincidence or whether Stan Lee kind of ripped them off. But regardless, Silver Age Doom Patrol is a lot of fun. Like, this is like weird superhero action from that era where there were like superheroes, characters could die off. Like, it wasn't just like your happy-go-lucky superhero tales. And that kind of set a tone for Doom Patrol that would go on. So like, they were, whether or not you say X-Men and Doom Patrol started kind of the same way, they both veered off in completely different directions, and I love them both. So it's not like I didn't hate that. But this is Doom Patrol: The Bronze Age. There's some early Eric Larson artwork in here, which is fun. But this was a continuation of them, and this had work by, was it Paul Kupperberg? I always draw blanks when I'm doing these videos. Yes, Kupperberg. Paul Kupperberg said that he was a huge fan of the Silver Age, and he went and did this, and then towards the end of his run, he realized he was just doing a normal superhero comic book and wasn't really honoring the things that he appreciated about the weirdness of the Silver Age. But I still think it's worth reading. This, though, is like the Doom Patrol run to read. If you're going to read one Doom Patrol run, you've got to read Grant Morrison's. Each of these runs can be read on their own, too, pretty much. You don't really have to have read any other previous run to enjoy it, especially this run. This is kind of like a reboot of the character. Like, Grant Morrison knew he was getting on the book, so he told Kupperberg to set the team up for him in the latter issues of this run by, like, killing off a couple characters, maybe introducing one or two, and then Grant Morrison took it off from there. But this is the one that the show on HBO is largely based off of. And this is the one that Rachel Pollack, where she took over right after Grant Morrison. And I would say that maybe if there were two that you would have to read, or if there's one of these that you have to read something beforehand, it probably would be more enjoyable to have read the Grant Morrison run before this one. But this is Rachel Pollack doing Doom Patrol, which is groundbreaking for a number of reasons within this run, which I can talk about on a future video. And this is Doom Patrol by John Byrne. This is kind of wild as a historical document, to be honest. Because it's John Byrne, he teams up with Chris Claremont for a few issues. He's inked by Terry Austin for a few issues. So it's kind of like that trio, that magical trio of Byrne, Claremont, and Terry Austin that did like the early Uncanny X-Men run. And it is funny too, seeing these crossovers of creators on both Doom Patrol and X-Men. Like, they're kind of linked together. Like, even Arnold Drake, who I talked about, who created Doom Patrol, in the Silver Age of Marvel, would go on to write some X-Men issues. And here we have that trio doing Doom Patrol. So just interesting how they're tied together. We should, if there ever was another Marvel DC crossover, that would be the crossover to have. Doom Patrol versus X-Men. But I digress. This is more John Byrne taking these weird superheroes and making them just superheroes. So, like, the great thing about, like, Grant Morrison understood and in the Silver Age was that these characters aren't just superheroes. These are the weirdest of the weird, that go on these, they don't even, like, they're not even missions. They're like life moments, life-changing things that they are trying to save the world, but not in the way of like a diabolical, evil, mad scientist kind of thing. So this is John Byrne, maybe misunderstanding that, or maybe him just wanting to do superheroes. But regardless, it is worth reading just for the John Byrne artwork, I guess. Silver Age Green Lantern. This has a lot of great Carmine Infantino artwork. I'm still in volume 1. I haven't finished this one yet. But this is also great, like, sci-fi pulp action, more so than just superheroes. The Muppets Omnibus. I can't praise this thing enough. So this is kind of like a joke around the Omnibus community. It's been, like, liquidated to heck. You can find it for, like, $8 some places. But trust me that this is actually a really good book. It's Roger Langridge, who's an underground cartoonist, who went on and Marvel is just basically like, here's the Muppets, do whatever you want. And he made it, if you're a fan of the Muppet Show, like the old show from like the 60s, 70s, where it's like a variety show like SNL, like Saturday Night Live or something, or Monty Python. That's what this is. Roger Langridge it does a really great love letter to that era, but it's within a comic book too. So it's a lot of the Muppet Show stuff, like the funny bits that they would do is like that they're self-aware that they're on a TV show. Well, Roger Langridge brings that to the comics, and I love that the blurbs are even Statler and Waldorf. This book isn't half bad. Nope, it's all bad. Like, there's so much in here that's such a love letter to the Muppets that I can't recommend that enough. If you're a fan of Muppets, or if you're a fan of funny comics, I recommend that. Black Panther by Christopher Priest. So this was an interesting one. Volume 2 is coming out later this year. The first Black Panther run I ever read in my life was the Ultimate Collection of this run, and I hated it. But then years passed, and I read a bunch of early Black Panther comics and some early, even like the 70s Kirby run and stuff, and then I fell in love with the character. So in my reading of Black Panther, I'm going to revisit this and in this omnibus, and I feel like I'll have a new appreciation for it, because I feel like Christopher Priest's writing really warrants you to have read a lot of the earlier lore of the character, and maybe I will grow to love it. Here is Robin the Bronze Age omnibus. Got this at an Ollie's for very cheap, but this is, just as it says, Bronze Age Robin stories. He didn't have his own series, though. These are all Detective Comics, World's Finest, Batman Family, DC Comics Presents. Yeah. But this is like basically Robin the college years. So at one point, Batman and Bruce Wayne tells Dick Grayson to go to college, kind of, hang up the tights for a while, but Robin takes him to college with him, and it goes on to a lot of adventures with Batgirl and whatnot, so that's fun stuff. I had someone joke about how I organize my shelves like I think he said serial killer, which they're very haphazard. But this is what happens sometimes. I was trying to organize my manga up there, so this fit into the spot down here, and I threw these down here. But this is Blackjack. They're all upside down too, it looks like. By Osamu Tezuka. This is a really fun series about a surgeon, a master surgeon, with some like metaphysical aspects to it. But I love the way these books are designed. But there's like a whole bunch of volumes of this. Like, I think there's like 17 volumes of the series, but I can only get my hands on the first 3. I hope they reprint the rest, because I really enjoyed that series. Osamu Tezuka is known for creating Astro Boy, and he's also like known for, he's like the Jack Kirby of manga, in the sense that he's done more manga pages than anyone else will ever be able to do. So there's like a ton of Osamu Tezuka beyond just Astro Boy, And this was one of his longer series. Animal Man by Grant Morrison. So it's just like a couple years ago that I read my first Grant Morrison comic. And he was kind of they were kind of a writer that I avoided for the longest time. I don't know why. I think it was just because I was under the impression that he's kind of a hard, they are a hard writer to get into because they have so many out there kind of ideas. But then I started with Animal Man. I think this is the best way to start because Grant Morrison, this is where they introduce, I keep getting the pronouns wrong, I apologize to Grant. They introduce a lot of their more wackier ideas, but in the most grounded ways. And you see that progress throughout the series. So this very much starts off as a normal superhero comic, but then by the end of it, Grant Morrison really grabs a lot of the ideas and twists and turns that they would go on to implement in a lot of their work later in their career. So if you're trying to be, what I'm trying to say is this is the best gateway comic into Grant Morrison's work. And it is a great comic. I can't recommend it enough. Planetary by Warren Ellis and John Cassaday. This was a newer purchase of like late last year, I believe. And I actually have not read it yet. I haven't prepared myself quite ready for it. I'm trying to finish The Authority first. Not that they're really that tied together, but I just know that this book is going to be an experience, the way people describe it, and I need to read it from beginning to end. So it's on my list whenever I finish a long series to pick it up, but I will get to it. The Fourth World Omnibus by Jack Kirby. This was my first omnibus ever, and boy did I pick a big book to start with. The omnibus format interests me because it's literally, the idea of it is to collect in a giant run or collection of a creator or whatnot, all in one big fat book. And when I was getting back into comics after reading Roughneck and whatnot, and as this library was growing to what you see it is, one of the things I was exploring was Jack Kirby because he was the artist that I really liked from the older comics that I'd read and one that I want to dive into the most. And I heard about the Fourth World concept. I have a video on this. My first ever omnibus overview was on this book. So my first ever omnibus I bought and the first ever overview I did was on this book. And the idea that his whole entire Fourth World saga was collected in this one book interested me so much that I bought it. And now you can see how many omnibuses I've bought since then. This is the Bronze Age by Jack Kirby. And there's like a tear on the dust jacket. But guess what? That tear on the dust jacket, annoying and ugly as it may be, was offered me the ability to buy this book for like $40. And it's like a $150 cover price. So I can deal with a little bit of damage or tears if it saves me that kind of money. But so right here, I guess I should go over here. So in early 1970, 71, Jack Kirby went to DC Comics and he did the Fourth World Saga. And then he did a bunch of other series, which are collected in here, in the Commandy. And in a matter of like 4 or 5 years, this collects all of Jack Kirby's 70s DC work in all 3 of these fat, beautiful looking omnibuses. Like the entire, I can't believe that's 4 years of comic book work. I can't believe that someone was able to accomplish that, but it's Jack Kirby. He's the king for a reason. But yeah, so this collects a lot of his smaller series, I guess, of that. Like you have like OMAC, you have the Losers, you have the Demon, Sandman, the early Sandman stories he did. I guess they're all in the back there. You can see. Days in the Mob, Manhunter. Yeah, Cobra. So that's kind of it's not a hodgepodge. It's collected very well, but it's a lot of his shorter runs, I guess. And this is Commandy, where he took a lot of the concepts from Planet of the Apes and then kind of turned them on their head a little bit and did his own series of a boy, the last boy on Earth. This is iZombie. I said this before, I'll say it again. I think Mike Allred is the #1 best artist in comics today. This is him doing a horror comic, which is a lot different from his style. He's got like the Silver Age-y classic style. But there's also guest issues in here. Well, that glare was really creepy. You couldn't see your pupils. I think there's a guest issue by Jim Rugg. Look at those end papers. Just brains. Jay Stevens, who I love. Gilbert Hernandez does guest issue as well. So a lot of cool cartoonists in there. And there was a TV series that this was based off of, or no, sorry, the TV series was based off of this comic book. But I hear they're a lot different. But this I can't recommend this enough. It's all in one. It's fun horror comics, and it was a DC Vertigo title. Seven Soldiers by Grant Morrison. I have not gotten to this one yet. This is on my list, short list of Grant Morrison to read. But I can't wait. It's Grant Morrison kind of tying together these 4 different series that he's doing, and tying them together. I think he described it in his book about being like a team of superheroes trying to accomplish the same mission without ever working together, kind of thing, which sounds interesting. Supergirl, Silver Age, Volume 2. Volume 1, I believe, is next to my bed, because I'm currently working my way through it. But a lot of good early Otto Bender stories, and Supergirl back then was a fun character that I grew an appreciation for in the Legion of Superheroes of that same era. So now we have one of these messy shelves down here where all the books are sideways, and I'm going to hit some highlights for you. Up first, I have the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. These are like die-cut cover books that are really cool. Collecting all of Gilbert Shelton's books, or stories of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. And as you can see, this is Volume 5 and 6. They were releasing these in reverse order. How wacky and funny. Volume 4 just came out recently, and then Volumes 3, 2, and 1 will come out after that. Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, a book that every comic book reader should read. Terror Assaulter by Benjamin Mara. This book is out there and weird and violent, and I love it. By Fantagraphics Books. Puke Force by Brian Chippendale. Dread and Superficiality was a Woody Allen comic strip, or comic strip about Woody Allen. I found that for like really cheap at a Half Price Books, and just had to try it out for its weirdness, the weird idea of it. Then I have Image Grand Design. Shout out to the Cartoonist Kayfabe Ringside Seats guys and Weapon Eck. Those are both fan comics. They were bootleg comics done by a lot of great cartoonists on their way up, who I'm sure you'll see and hear their names one day. Peter Bag's Other Lives. It's Peter Bag on a Vertigo title, which is cool. Some more volumes of the Now anthology from Fantagraphics. What's the Furthest Place from Here? Art Adams Creature Features. That's a rare paperback that I found of early Art Adams like monster comics. The Doofus Omnibus by Rick Altergott. Bulletproof Coffin with Shaky Kane. 100% by Paul Pope. I bought that on my... Last year I graduated from Penn State, and we went on a trip to New York and Pennsylvania for graduation. And I went to a comic book shop by Penn State on campus, and the shop owner highly recommended that book to me, and I've always wanted to try out Paul Pope. I bought it and became a big Paul Pope fan. And I always, whenever I go to like, even back in the day when I used to go like CD shopping and stuff, and then when I go to comic book shops, if someone that works there recommends me something, I always want to try it out. Just the experience of that and the memories of buying it and knowing where I bought it and who recommended it to me is all part of the journey, I believe. Transformers vs. G.I. Joe, the Quintessential Collection by Tom Scioli. Lots of fun. The pitch for this story was like Sergeant Fury's Howling Commandos versus the New Gods. And it was pitched to Tom Scioli that way because Tom Scioli is a huge Kirby fan. And I loved it. Superman Golden Age, Volume 1. This is the early Superman Golden Age comics. Some Best American Comics volumes. Patience by Daniel Klaus. Scud the Disposable Assassin. You can see down there. Over on this side, we've got some Hot Wire comics. I'm a huge fan of Glenn Head as well. And I only had Volume 3, I think. And Glenn Head was showing off some of the artwork from Volumes 1 and 2. This was like an anthology that he edited back in the day. Some awesome artwork. And he posted and I commented, I've been looking for these volumes, but I can't find them anywhere. They're super out of print. So Glenn's like, I have a few copies. I'll send them to you. So he signed it, drew a little sketch in there, and put, for my name on there. So it's really cool. And Glenn Head's a guy I interacted with online quite a bit since then. He's a really great cartoonist. he's the one that wrote Chartwell Banner that I showed on an earlier video. And also you'll see his name right here. He wrote Chicago, which is an autobio comic that kind of acts ostensibly as like a sequel to Chartwell Manor because they're both autobio comics. And if you read Chartwell Manor and then read Chicago, you can kind of see the path of Glenn Head's life. This is Echo Lands by J.H. Williams, and I love showing this cover off because look at the range of artwork that J.H. Williams is capable of just by looking at the cover. Well, this is just volume 1, and I hope J.H. Williams continues that series because I think it's really great. And it's done in landscape format, which is kind of cool. Alien, the original screenplay, Old Gods, New Gods. What's this? Oh, X-Men vs. Teen Titans. Great Walt Simonson artwork. Orion by Walt Simonson, volume 1 and 2. Those are all my Fourth World reading order that I did. Let's hit up some more highlights. DC Goes to War. Maze book by Jeff Lemire. Plastic Man. This is the only volume I have of Jack Cole Plastic Man, and I want more because Jack Cole was such a great cartoonist. These are some of the best Golden Age comics that I've read, superhero comics, and I want to get more of those, but sadly, it hasn't been properly collected. Savage Dragon Ultimate Collection, Volume 1. I'm so happy that Eric Larson finally decided to reprint these in color in this oversized format. I do wish he was collecting more issues per volume because this is going to be like a 20-something odd volume series, but I'll take it any way I can. Decorum, Alex Sinner, if you've ever, by Munoz and Sampea, if you've ever wondered where Frank Miller's concepts and artwork style came from, or where he got the concepts and the artwork style for Sin City, read Alex Sinner. You'll, just flipping through this book, I'm going to do a video on this because it's so great, but just flipping through this book, you'll see like, oh, that's where Frank Miller got the Sin City thing. Not to say like Frank Miller like stole it or anything. Like, he has his influences, and there's, you know, worse people he could have been influenced by. One Beautiful Spring Day, Jim Woodring, Frank comics that are all silent, but they're incredible. And even though they're silent and wordless, you will still spend just as much time just looking at the beautiful artwork and reading through the story, quote unquote, through the artwork as you would if there were words in it. It's amazing. Essential Guide to Lettering by Nate Picos. Spain Rodriguez, I have all 3 volumes of his collected comics for Fantagraphics. They're not in order here. On the spine, they will spell Spain because there should be 2 more volumes. Right now, it just says Spa. But yeah. And then Trigon Empire. Shout out to Earl Grey. Earl Grey's always showing off great comics from Don Lawrence. Finally, these were collected. They collected some of his books in English, again in an affordable format that's not out of print or anything like that. Trigon Empire has been really fantastic. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. It's like Roman Empire era comics with some sci-fi elements mixed in, some, you know, family drama, like Game of Thrones kind of stuff. But Don Lawrence's artwork is absolutely incredible. And he was a mentor for Liam Sharp, who I mentioned I'm a big fan of. All right, moving on. I didn't think I was going to have any videos longer than the first one, but here we are. These next 2 shelves are where a lot of my manga is, but not my only manga. And then Love and Rockets. So I had the box set, which collects the first 50 issues, but I've also been collecting this trade paperback omnibuses, I guess they call them, but not, I don't know. They've been collecting them in this format where, like, each volume will be dedicated to a different Hernandez brother. So it's collecting their stories kind of in a chronological order-ish, but not like as the stories came out. They're kind of recollecting them in the best reading order, if you will. It's hard to explain. I'll do a video on it. But these are awesome. I love the designs of the spines. They were designed by Jacob Covey, who's no longer with Fantagraphics, but he did a lot of great book design work for him. But Maggie and the Mechanics, and then Girl from Hoppers, those are both Jaime Hernandez. Prolo Loco was the first Gilbert Hernandez one they did, and so was Heartbreak Soup. And then Human Diastrophism, sorry, by Gilbert. And then Beyond Palomar. Palomar is the town that Gilbert's stories take place in. It's like the town he's created for his characters. Amor y Quixotes. This has, I think, Jaime, Gilbert, and Mario stories in it. Penny Century. The titular character here is one of the main characters of Jaime's stories. Probably one of my favorite characters, but then also has a lot of wrestling comics in there. Esperanza. If you're wanting to try out Love and Rockets, though, I feel like this is the easiest and most affordable format to try it out in, is these volumes. And these are pretty much evergreen. If you find yourself needing one of these volumes and it's out of print right now, don't pay over cover price for it. They'll come back into print shortly one day. But if you're wanting to try out Love and Rockets, I would say start off with Maggie and the Mechanics by Jaime Hernandez. I think that's where I started off with this exact book, and it made me a fan for life. Then we have some manga here. I have Deadpool volumes 1 and 2, Deadpool Samurai. This was Viz Media doing a Deadpool story. And it was a lot of fun. Deadpool's a character that I've kind of grown to love, even in spite of his kind of annoying popularity, I guess. This is manga. I need to go backwards. I remembered. Okay, Manga Theater by Akira Toriyama. Akira Toriyama. So I grew up with friends that were huge fans of Dragon Ball Z, and I hated that show. I couldn't stand the show. I tried. I watched over 24 episodes with them. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. In my adult life, as I've been exploring manga, I've grown a fondness and love for Akira Toriyama's artwork. So this, and then I have a few more Toriyama books right here. I have Sandland, Kawa, and Jocko, which I can't recommend enough. It's tokusatsu. It's great. I love it. So I've grown a fondness for his artwork. And then Dr. Slump, which is one of the funniest comics I've ever read in my life, by Akira Toriyama. I read that all digitally on the Shonen Jump app. What I'm trying to say here is I'm going to give the Dragon Ball Z manga a chance probably this year, and we'll see how that goes. I've heard that it's better than the cartoon and it's paced better, so maybe. Then I have Die Dark. This is a kind of a horror manga of the weirdness of Kyu Hayashida. What? I'm trying to think of the series that she was famous for, the mangaka here. Does it tell me? These are all by Seven Seas Entertainment. Dang it. I can't remember the name of it. There's a Netflix series. I'm drawing a blank. Put it in the comments for me. I'm running low on time here. But Die Dark is just as weird, trippy, and horror-esque as the other series. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. But I love it, and I love the artwork. It's just like dirty and gritty looking. This is Adventures of Dai. This is from the Dragon Quest of volumes 1 and 2. The Akira Toriyama, the aforementioned, did a lot of the character designs for the Dragon Quest video game. And these are kind of based off of it. And you can see like the character designs look kind of Akira Toriyama-ish. He has nothing to do with this manga, but I want to try this out and see if it was a good shonen manga that my son and I could read together. This is Osamu Tezuka's Ode to Kirihito. So Tezuka's a mangaka that I've been trying to read a lot more of. So you saw the Black Phoenix earlier. This is another one of his. And I love the design of this book. It looks so cool. And it's all in one. It's like a mystery story. And this is Book of Human Insects by Osamu Tezuka. And then this isn't a manga, but this is Noah Van Sciver's The Complete Blammo, issues 1 through 5. The Kilgore Press, you can see on the spine there, they ran a Kickstarter last year where they collected a lot of books that Kilgore puts out. And this was the first time that Noah Van Sciver's Blammo has been collected all in one. And it only collects the first 5 issues, so I hope there's another volume. But I love Noah Van Sciver, and it's his one-man anthology. Good stuff. Over here I have Stan Lee. You might have seen him featured in some videos or my photos on my Instagram. Which, by the way, follow me on Instagram, Taylor Talks Comics. Here's some more manga. This is Taiyo Matsumoto. Oh, jeez, I keep going the wrong way. Taiyo Matsumoto's Ping Pong. This is a great sports manga. Taiyo Matsumoto, I'm a big fan of. I hope that they reprint some of his earlier stuff that I don't have, like Go-Go Monster and Tech on Concrete. But until then, Ping Pong was great, and I have a few of his other mangas mixed in somewhere. This is a Ben Spears All Ages story series that my son just recently read and loved. But Ben Spears is a really fun cartoonist that I've enjoyed, and I bought this to read for myself, but then my son's starting to get to the point where he's like borrowing comics from my library, and I love it. So I'm always looking for like kind of all ages comics that he can enjoy as well. 20th Century Boys. Holy crap. Okay. So I have the first 8 volumes of this. You can see volume 3 is not here right now. It's actually in my backpack. Because I'm currently reading this for the first time. Naoki Urasawa is a manga that everything I've heard about, I can tell that he writes comics the way I want them to be written, that I will enjoy. I have not been thrilled by a comic book series in so long the way that this series is thrilling me so far. Like I said, I'm on volume 3 right now as I'm reading this. It's just so magnificent. I'm going to do a video on this series, so I'm just going to stop talking about it. But it's just so thrilling. Like, that's the word I can use to describe that. Then I have Fist of the North Star. This is a magnificent series. The easy elevator pitch I always give people for the series trying to try it out is, which is a great cover for this. Imagine Bruce Lee if he was the star of a Mad Max movie. Do you need to hear anything else? No, just try this series out. It's so awesome. It's violent. It's action-packed. It's not going to be your literary works of genius, but if you're wanting some great, violent action stories that you don't have to think too hard about, try Fist of the North Star. So my rule for myself for manga, because I do have limited shelf space, is that with these longer series, which I've heard this will be like 15 volumes or so, I buy one volume, and then I keep buying them as long as they keep interesting me. So far for Fist of the North Star, because I heard it gets kind of formulaic as it goes on. So far, though, through 7 volumes, I'm still all in, baby. I'm still trying to collect every volume. Volume 8 did just come out, which I need to get. This is a series called Planets or Planetes, depending on who you ask. But it's a great sci-fi series. It's 2 volumes, and it's put out by Dark Horse Comics. Then we're going to get to some Legion of Superheroes with some Simon Hanselman cameo here. This is Below Ambition. This is the most recent Mega Mog volume to come out by Simon Hanselman. I love the series. It even came with, oh yeah, it's falling out right now. This cool, whoa. Yeah. I forget what, not 45 record? I don't know. Music. It came with music. But yeah, so it's a fun comedic series, like stoner comics, with a lot of mental health and kind of dark comedy to it, I guess. This is Legion of Superheroes. I read this last year in this first volume, Omnibus, on the recommendation of the aforementioned Omnidog, Jess Bragg. And I loved it. It's so whimsical, so fun, colorful superhero comics. The cast of characters is mad extensive. But also there's a lot of serious things happen. Some characters die off. Some characters get kicked out of the team. Some characters don't make the team, get cut and stuff. So I fell in love with it, and then this happened. I bought volume 2 and volume 3. Then I got all these other ones. So this is volume 1 of the Superboy and Legion of Superheroes, the Paul Levitz era, in volume 2. This is Before the Darkness, volume 1. Before the Darkness, volume 2. This is the Great Darkness Saga, which is like one of the all-time great Keith Giffen, Paul Levitz series of Legion of Superheroes. And this is Levitz and Giffen doing the Curse, the follow-up to that. And then this is 5 years later, which is more Keith Giffen stories. And then 5 years later, volume 2. So I'm doing a big Legion of Superheroes read-through. I haven't gotten to this point yet, but I'm excited to. There is a run in between these two that has never been collected. That's not here. And there's also a run between these two that would be like a Bronze Age omnibus if they ever put it out. They collected it in the old archives, hardcovers, but it hasn't been collected since then. So there's like 3 volumes of the archives I could pick up and put here, but they're way out of print, and I don't want to overpay for them. Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus. Why do I have another volume of this? because a lot of my favorite comics I like to collect in multiple volumes, but this is reprinted in the best. I think this is the best reprinting of that material. I need to do a video on that and why I think that. But I love these little handsome standard size hardcovers that collect the series. New Gods by Jerry Conway. This was a great follow-up to the original New Gods story that I really enjoyed. Mr. Miracle by Steve Englehart and Steve Gerber. Steve Englehart and Steve Gerber are two of my favorite writers from Marvel's 70s era. This, I would say, was a sad disappointment. Cosmic Odyssey. Great Jim Starlin writing. Great Mike Mignola artwork on Cosmic DC. Can't go wrong. Next shelf here, I have Zombie Coffee by, which is a great Mickey Mouse story. The Frank book with more Jim Woodring silent comics of the Frank character. Murder Falcon by Dana Warren Johnson, one of my favorite cartoonists going today. This looks like an outrageous, mindless comic, but I promise you, that's just on the surface. Once you read this, it's heart-wrenching, and you'll fall in love with these characters in a way that you didn't expect. Odyssey by Matt Fraction and Christian Ward. I haven't read this yet. I'm kind of disappointed because it's a volume 1 and volume 2 hasn't been solicited. This came out a few years ago. But I like most everything I've read that's written by Matt Fraction, and Christian Ward's a great artist. This is kind of a cosmic story and a different take on the Odyssey. The whole thing intrigued me, but I think the disappointment of volume 2 not being solicited kind of hurt my wanting to read it, I guess. Black Badge by Tyler Jenkins and Matt Kent with coloring by Hillary Jenkins. This is Boy Scouts turned super spies. I was a Boy Scout growing up. I'm actually an Eagle Scout, fun fact. So any sort of Boy Scout comic book has me intrigued instantly. But Matt Kent's great with super spies and clandestine missions and those kinds of things. So the book was just made for him and made for me to buy. Metallic Dynamite, that's a great anthology book. Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is Mike Mignola adapting Bram Stoker's Dracula. And this reprint is all in black and white, so you get to really, truly appreciate Mike Mignola's art. Milligan and McCarthy. This is Peter Milligan and Brandon McCarthy, all their kind of creator-owned independent stories. I love Peter Milligan's writing, and Brandon McCarthy is a great artist that does just some weird things with color and techniques that I enjoy a lot. Shazam! This is a great, great book. This is like a coffee table book by Chip Kidd and Jeff Spear that really go through the history of the Captain Marvel character with a lot of the memorabilia and stuff that came about afterwards, but it's just a really great book. I can't recommend that one enough. Krickstein Comics. This is Bernie Krickstein's work. Fantagraphics collected, I think, 2 or 3 of these. Bernie Krickstein was a great artist of the Golden Age. I have one of the Fantagraphics EC comics that's dedicated to him, and this was an old library copy. But I bought it cheap, and the insides are good. I don't know. Bad Gateway. This is another Simon Hanselman, Megan Mogg story. It feels like Marvel or DC doing this. I would hate it, so I guess I'm kind of hypocritical in this regard, but I do love that all the different formats and stuff that the Megan Mogg books are collected in. Cosmic Detective. I have a video on this. David Rubin, Jeff Lemire, Matt Kent doing a jam comic. Kaiju Max. Xander Cannon's creator-owned series that is an absolute wonder, absolute amazing work of art. So it looks cartoony on the surface, but boy, are these stories dark. There are kaiju monsters being sent to an island as prisoners. I don't think I need to say anything else. If that doesn't sound intriguing to you, then I don't know, we can't be friends. Just kidding. This is a gallery edition, so I don't know why they're not all together. I have a lot of these Marvel gallery editions that are oversized. They're bigger than even DC Absolutes. This is the Spider-Man wedding album. It collects all the stories surrounding the big wedding between Peter and Mary Jane. Once in the Future by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora. Dan Mora is one of the best cartoonists going and artists in comics today. These Fists Break Bricks. I did a video on this. This is not comics, but it's kind of comics adjacent. It's really a coffee table book about the history of kung fu movies. 1-800 Ghosts by G. Davis Cathcart. This is a single issue comic book, but you can see how big it is. It's very large. And it was an independent comic book that was originally released in this smaller format. I kind of wish I bought it because I saw it in a store when it was in the smaller format, but Fantagraphics reprinted it in this giant format. Visual Funk by Jim Offord. It's a Jim Offord art book. Steve Skroce and the Wachowskis doing Doc Frankenstein. This is an awesome science fiction action comic where a Frankenstein monster is like, I don't know, Rambo kind of. Jim Starlin's Warlock. This is the gallery edition. I love this era of Jim Starlin. I'm going to probably sell this though because I want the Warlock Omnibus. Wolverine Weapon X. This is another pride of my collection. Maybe that's the theme of this video. This is one of the best Marvel stories ever, and this is the best way it's ever been reprinted. This is Barry Windsor Smith doing a Wolverine story, and it's magnificent. It's visceral. The artwork is absolutely incredible, and everyone should read it. It blows my mind that story itself is not held in as high regard as like The Dark Knight Returns and whatnot. It's that good. But I can't do anything else. The art of Rob Schrab. Rob Schrab did Scud the Disposable Assassin, and he also did like Monster House, like the movie and stuff. This is a art book from him. The Death of Captain Marvel, more Jim Starlin goodness. The Contest of Champions, Marvel Superhero Contest of Champions. This is their first true big crossover event, so I had to get that. I have this in a video. This is Harvey Kurtzman's Trump. This is a magazine, a comedic magazine that he printed that only lasted 2 issues. These scraps and remains of the third issue is collected in here as well. But Harvey Kurtzman he created Mad Magazine, so this is like one of his other attempts to do another comedic magazine. Red Rock Baby Candy. This is the debut of Shira Spector as a cartoonist, and it's a amazing, heart-wrenching story, like true autobio comics. Okay, I gotta run through this last because this video is lasting a long time, and hopefully I haven't lost everybody here. Young Romance Volumes 1 and 2, great Simon Kirby romance comics. WYSIWYG by Ed Piskor. Heaven No Hell by Michael DeForge. It's great comic. I love Michael DeForge's weird artwork. Dog Biscuits. It's like the great comic book that came out of the pandemic. And then we have 2 of the Brian Blomworth's books, Bicycle Day and Mycelium Wassani. I can't pronounce that. I think I showed one of these off I think I showed both these off actually in my whole video for my New York trip. If you want to check those out. 32 stories. Those are the Adrian Tomine Optic Nerve mini comics being collected in a nice little box set. John Porcelino's King Cat comics being collected. The Mundane Adventures of Dishman. Wizard number 2. This is important because yours truly, me, Taylor, I edited this entire magazine. This is a 420-page comics anthology. It has like comic strips in there, as well as interviews and articles about comics. I edited that entire thing for Eli from Cosmic Line Comics. So that was like my first work in comics that I ever did. And I'm pretty proud of it. It turned out really good. Marble Season, Musical Monsters of Turkey Hollow. I have a video on that. Snake Eyes, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. New Gods. There's some more John Porcelino comics here. New Gods, 1 and 2. More Peter Bagg comics. More Megan Manga comics. Plain Janes by Jim Rugg. More Megan Mog. The Action Bible. Pistol Whip by Matt Kent. Asterios Polyp by David Mazzucchelli. That's an amazing book. And I think I'm going to end there. I've already ran quite long, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me. This was part 3. Part 4 will be much shorter, I promise. But I guess maybe it's a thing. The odd episodes are longer than the even episodes. But this was over these 2 bookshelves, and I appreciate you sticking with me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up. Comment down below with books that you want me to do future videos on. Questions you have, recommendations you have for me. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the love and support. I'll catch you guys later.